And then in 2006, I bumped into my first cod. Wasn't 100% sure what it was when I shot it, but then it quickly dawned on me what it was. And then slowly over the years, I've extended where I've dived, learned a bit more about them. And then, yeah, we had some good years. The areas that we've been going haven't been as productive in recent couple of years.
Just a few
Yep.
questions before we move into the heart of the subject of the how to hunt the cods. Did you do any water-based sports before? Like, I don't know, a lot of us doing underwater hockey or water polo or stuff like that, or
no, not really. I mean, I did an amount of swimming, I guess. We always had swimming pools at home, and that is sort of typical for South Africa. You have a swimming pool, but that's about as far as it really went. Okay. The gear I use, generally in the UK, I use only two spear guns, either a 75 centimeter if it's dirtyish water, and a 90 centimeter if it's clean. So that's as far as I go. I don't go for any double banded stuff, roller guns, nothing too long, not for the UK. It's one of those two guns.
Okay.
So with the cod, then
sorry, are you going into wooden gun, or are you like carbon fanatic or aluminium?
I must confess, I do like the carbon guns. I guess, I mean, myself and Ross have discussed it a few times. My sort of grip strength is probably not as, I'm quite skinny and everything. So my ability to, I don't handle powerful guns very well, so I get really inaccurate. So when going to wooden guns with multiple barrels, I've tried that in the Med extensively, I find I'm hideously inaccurate. So I tend to go with carbon guns and just have a light setup, one rubber, never two rubbers, because I just become completely inaccurate, and just keep it light and simple and everything. And even in the Med, now what I've done is I have an almost identical setup to what I've got with a carbon barrel, but I've added a roller tip at the end for Med diving to get that extra range where you need it, but not for the UK. Okay. And then my guns are reasonably consistent setups and feel and everything right across the range from, in the UK with the shorter gun right up to, the longest gun I use, which is about a 1.1 meter.
Okay.
Okay, so I try and maintain that consistency. Okay, a little bit about cod. I exercised my powers of Google to get you some information. So the Latin name, I can't probably pronounce as well, is Gadus morhua. Okay, it's probably completely wrong. They distributed across the North Atlantic to depths of about 600 meters. Within the channel, they spawn inshore along the south coast between January and April, and the spawning is seldom observed in the Western Channel. So possibly that's why I know in winter they catch cod along some parts of Dorset and stuff from the inshore, on line along Chesil Beach, etc. I'm not sure if they do that on Cornwall, etc. from the shore.
Yeah, no, Cornwall
possibly.
Is often, for some spot of Cornwall is often from not far from the shore, but
okay.
Still not reachable from the shore itself. You need to like a kayak and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. So sexual maturity is between 2 and 4 years and is approximately 60 centimeters. Now, the length at which a cod reaches sexual maturity seems to vary immensely. So anywhere between 40 centimeters and a meter. Okay. But 60 centimeters, I believe, is where approximately 50% of the cod are sexually mature.
Yeah.
So
just to add on the size, I went on the IFCA website.
Yep.
And the legal size is 35 centimeters.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Well, like we always say, there is what's legal and what's reasonable. So
Yeah.
you need to find the right, it's like for the bass, it's 42 centimeters, but a 42 centimeters bass is probably just 1 kilo.
Yeah.
So if you can go a bit longer than what is legal, it will be better for the species on the long run.
Absolutely. So like the LIC, we have our pairs competition, and there we've set the minimum size at 45 centimeters. So it's quite a bit bigger, and even a 45 centimeter cod is quite a small cod. I don't know what it weighs, but it's probably about 1.5 kilos, maybe a kilo, because they're long and skinny when they're small. So they quickly achieve, the length, but they weigh nothing.
Can you just explain what was the LIC? Because maybe
sorry guys, the London International Club. So they're sort of based around London, but we have members all over, and we host just a fun gathering. It's not really a competition, but we have a little competition as a format for a social gathering. So that happens normally in July, and we all gather on Portland. But you can dive wherever you like in the UK, and you just gather on Portland Bull, weigh in your catch, and and have a few drinks and whatnot. So for that event, we've specified 45 centimeters. And some years we see small cod that probably go 45 centimeters, but they're really small and they weigh next to nothing. So I've seen some guys shooting the odd one like that, but I think it's more just so that they can tell people that they've shot a cod. But if you see a really small one like that, rather just leave it alone and then tell everyone you could have shot a cod rather than come out with a tiny little one, But to be honest, those small ones aren't that prevalent, not in the areas that I dive, possibly in other areas. So most of the ones we're seeing are have normally been 4 pounds and up. So it's all reasonable fish. In terms of the gear for cod, I'll show you a little video first. I'll just share the first video to show you guys a little bit about what happens when things go wrong.
Yeah.
There we go. Unfortunately, I've got the music. It's nice to always hear the crackle of the reef and the gun and everything, but the music seems a bit too prominent. Okay, so if you can see, that is a really nice big cod, possibly the biggest I've ever seen. Okay, so I shot it. It's in the head, but it hasn't killed the fish. The fish starts going mental, rubbing itself on the bottom. Okay, and I swim up.
Yeah.
And there we go. That's one spear snapped at the notch. So great frustration. So what we did, Ross, that's Ross in the background. He also lost a really nice cod in exactly the same way, with the spear snapping at the notch. So what we tended to do after that is, when targeting a cod, is use spears with the shark fins or pins on them rather, because the cod's a big strong fish, and they do tend to twist and turn on the spear, and that can end up snapping those stainless spears, typically at the notch.
Yeah. And
okay.
Did you ever use one of these big trident? The MATC?
No, I never use those.
Because in Normandy, in France, they're using a lot of that for the cod.
Okay.
Like for the bass, they like it because it's quite heavy. You don't have a long range for them. It's only for almost a cave or how you call that, or wrecks.
Yeah.
And to be able to stone the fish, so it's not going to mess around.
I guess it depends on the circumstances that you're seeing them. A lot of the time we're seeing them out in the open. I'll show you footage of both ways, but probably 70% or so is out in the open. So I wouldn't want to be using a trident for that. I'd rather, make sure I had a little bit of range and the proper penetration to go through the fish. So yeah, I guess, I mean, I've dived for them in Denmark as well, and the ones I was shooting there were in holes and could probably have done better, and it would have probably been a little bit easier with a trident than the normal Tahitian spear that I was using, but I just use what I'm used to.
Yeah, I'm just going to add up something regarding Denmark. I went to do the comp last year, so we went with the UK team last year. Trident is not allowed; it's forbidden for spearfishing. So it just makes things very, very easy for everyone.
Okay.
Everyone with a single spear. So after you can have 1 or 2 barbs, that's not a problem. But trident is not, because I arrive on the side of the boat and with my trident and say, no, you're not allowed to use that in our water. Say, okay.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, I learned it.
I don't have tridents.
Basically, I learned it the day I arrived. I just gonna do like a small. Matt is asking, what about the effect of the trident on accuracy? With a big trident, I'm talking about the MATC. You can look online. They're very heavy, so you're gonna have a meter of range. After that, the spear is literally doing that, like a big drop after the meter. So it won't be a long range stuff, and you need quite a powerful bungees to be able to push that trident out. Yeah,
okay.
That was just a small comment about the trident. Carry on.
All right. Yeah. So in terms of gear, it's normally I use a 90 centimeter with a normal Tahitian spear, single barb, and shark fins. The things that we have in common on the ground, and it's like that for many types of fish, is the fish wants food and it wants shelter. All right. So the places that, especially in Dorset, we've been getting them around mussel beds, not necessarily on the mussel beds, but near mussel beds, okay? And the reason for the mussel beds is because those mussel beds have a huge amount of the little dark brown crabs. It's not that brown edible crab, it's the little one, okay? So those are all over those mussel beds, and we find the cod around structure, which is somewhere near mussel beds. All right. So any of the cod that we tend to shoot on in those areas, if you gut them and you take their gut and you like squeeze it like a tube of toothpaste, it's just crab after crab after crab will pop out, like 10, 12 little crabs, sort of 1 inch across or less. Lots of these little crabs will just be popping out of them. So that's for Dorset. Similarly in Sussex, in late season, sort of September-ish time, there is some crustaceans that move in. The name escapes me completely. Eric Smith has told me, he's one of the old-time locals in Sussex. And the cod tend to move in for that food source in sort of September time. So I don't normally dive too far east in Sussex, but you get the very odd one at like Bognor Regis. I've shot a few there. I'll show you some footage of Bognor coming up. Also sort of towards off Littlehampton, that sort of area, you get more. And then where the Sussex boys go is even more east than that, sort of more off Shoreham and stuff like that. And at the right time, the right conditions, they can get some decent cod.
What the range of depth you can get a cod? Does 10 meters is realistic, or you absolutely need to go over that?
No, 10. It all depends on the area. So what area you've found. I'll show you some footage in 8 to 10 meters, and I'll show you some footage in past 20 meters. Okay. so it's not that the cod, I think, are prefer a certain depth. It's that the conditions that a cod wants, is what it's looking for. It's not, it doesn't need a certain depth. It needs food source and shelter. So we've found various areas like that, in a wide variety of depths. I'll show you some bits of the type of ground that we're getting them on. I'll just have to share the screen again.
Yeah.
Were you able to see the?
So we're talking about the ground and the depth, but does the temperature of the water is really influencing when you're going to find them?
Well, I mean, the cod do move. So, if, for example, in where we go in Dorset, they tend to move in earliest May, and the latest we've seen one is in the beginning of October. Okay. And the area that we go, they seem to peak in early summer. Okay, so say June, July, maybe they'll be at their peak abundance. And like I said, in Sussex, it's sort of late summer, September-ish time. In some of the guys on line fishing, I don't chase the fish in the middle of winter, but they're getting cod along Chesil Beach in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
So it's all dependent on why they're moving into various areas and for what reason, whether it be spawning or whether it be for chasing after a food source. Get rid of the sound. Okay, so yeah. Here is slightly deeper water. Okay, it's flat on the bottom, and there is isolated bits of structure. That you see in front of you isn't a large bit of structure. It doesn't sort of scream out sort of cod, but you'll see there is a cod anyway. Around this area, there is mussel beds nearby. There's a lot of crabs in this area. So that is why the cod is there, because there is all around this area, there's sort of boulders that they can hide under and the food.
There is food, yeah.
Yeah. So there he is. That's a typical, if you see them in the open, what they'll typically do. You saw it looked at me, and then it saw me, and then it turned, and it would have probably slowly swum away. And then once it starts swimming away, its curiosity is satisfied. The chances of you getting it are very slim, because if you try and chase after it, it'll just it'll just accelerate away. And they seldom tend to turn and come back.
They're not as inquisitive or like than the bass.
Yeah, I would say, oh, come on, stop. There, all right. They are inquisitive, but their curiosity is very quickly satisfied, and then they go. Right. So I'll show you some more footage a bit later. Interspersed with this, there's all sorts of bits, but you'll see how they can tend to just have a quick look, all right, and then he'll start swimming away. So hopefully you're facing the right direction, and you can get a shot in before he goes away. So this is also in Dorset. This is about 8 to 10 meters. You can see the kelp here. Yeah. There are mussel beds not far away from here. So I think that's why he's here. It just happens to be a nice little ledge that has a big undercut, and the cod can get in here. And me and Ross know this ledge quite well. And at one stage, we were taking a few fish out of it. Normally just one per day's diving. But then there was a succession of very bad weather over the winter, and the mussel beds basically disappeared. They started growing back, and then another huge, swells, and that churned up the water, which affects the ability of the mussels to, I'm not sure if it's feed or extract oxygen from the water, but it affects their, their apparatus that they they send out into the water. So it basically killed the mussel beds twice in succession. Once the main beds, and then the following year, the seeding of what had
What
had
was
been,
left?
what was left. So there was millions of these tiny mussels, then another pile of bad weather, and then all those died. And then there was about 4 years of no mussels, and then last year they were just starting to come back. So what it's like now, I don't know, obviously, but it'll be very interesting to have a look when we get out of this lockdown to see what's happening with the mussel beds. Okay, so this is about 8 meters.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Just do you see any other type of fish when around the cods? Like we like last Monday we talk about the bass. The bass is often you can find them because you're going to see the small like a shrimp. You're going to see the small pouting when you do them in caves and stuff like that. Do you have the same apart the crabs? Do you have any other fish swimming around with them, or they're more like individual single fish and they don't like company?
No, they don't mind company. I mean, when they're in the hole, there'll often be wrasse in. You'll see some evidence of that in some of the footage. There's wrasse, sometimes the pouting in the same holes. When they're in the open, we often see them, and you'll see a bit of footage a bit later of black bream. I mean, the black bream isn't necessarily an indicator species. It's just that they tend to also like the similar big structure in the deep waters. That's just where we're finding the cod in deeper water. So if we go down, often immediately the black bream will arrive at you first. They will also have a quick little look, especially when you're talking about the really big black bream. Okay, if you land at a really nice spot, which has some very good big structure, almost straight away you'll often have some big black bream have a very quick look, and their curiosity is satisfied even quicker than a cod, and they bugger off. So if you wanted to shoot one, you'd have to shoot it immediately. But the thing is, it's just a black bream. So we always leave those, and you kind of think, well, if he's still around when I need to surface, then I might try and shoot it. But then they always go. The big ones always go. Okay. And then you hope that there's a cod somewhere and that it'll get curious and come in. So you can't go and shoot the black bream, otherwise you wouldn't shoot the cod.
Okay.
So yeah, we pass up on large black bream in those circumstances. Okay, I'll just play this. So the visibility isn't that clear. There's a thin ledge under there. You can see the pout. Just if you look, you could see it very briefly. Yes. So it's quite they don't mind sort of tight little ledges and holes in that to get in, because that wasn't big. I could only just get my gun in, and that's about a 13-pound cod or so, something like that. He was wedged in under there.
Okay.
So let me just see. Depth I've already discussed. That was in the question. Fish behavior is also largely been discussed.
I'm just going to come back on. So most what we see on the footage is mostly only not really open. They always hang around a cave. You don't have like a kind of schooling behaviors like bass can have or pollock, where they're going to be like a meter on the top of the kelp and swimming around. They're more cruising around, no?
Yes. When I've seen them, they're more individually or in small little groups. 2 or 3 fish or whatever, maybe 5 fish at the most. I know some guys have found like really nice holes, and then they've shot quite a few cod out of them, but it's not what we found. We normally, target a more wider area and pick up, the odd fish here and there. And they do tend to be either in a hole or around some good structure, not far away from that, and they're not typically, traveling a lot, it seems. They're just sort of slowly cruising around, I guess hunting or whatever, looking for crabs or whatever they're doing. But yeah, we don't see them really aggregating up in the water column or anything.
Okay.
So yeah, so the fish behavior, I've already covered that mostly. So if you find them in a hole, I was wanting to show you a couple of footage of where you can actually see the fish in the hole. And if you find them tucked up in a hole, they are, they feel very secure in there, and they're very unlikely to, to move out or anything. It takes quite a lot to disturb them. I've got a little anecdote I'll share with you at the end. But if you find them in a more spacious hole, then yes, they can spook reasonably easily. And if you find them in the open, then they'll have a look, and then their curiosity will be satisfied, and it'll swim away.
So they're not, when they swim away, are they swimming away in kind of in the open, or can they go and hide?
I think what they probably do is swim away and then hide. And also what we find is that they're very susceptible to disturbance. So in the areas that we're diving for the cod, the greatest chance of finding them out in the open are in the first dive or two. And then it's it's more and more unlikely that you'll see them. So what we do is we cover a large area, and then often in the slack you might anchor or swim out from the shore, and then hunt around in that area, and you'll probably find one on the first dive or two on a nice area, and then you need to move. And then what we've often found, this boat traffic and all of this, and it just becomes extremely dead. Probably doing almost certainly is going into holes somewhere, and that it becomes so much more difficult to actually find them. The chances of you finding them, if there's quite a bit of structure around, especially if you're diving a bit of depth, there's only so much of the holes you can check really. So we find it gets really, really quiet. And then what often happens is if we stay out a long time, the other boat traffic tends to go. All the commercial fishing boats tend to go back to harbor. Once the current starts running, a lot of the activity tends to stop. And then what we tend to do is do some drift diving. Basically, we have it all to ourselves, and then you start seeing cod coming out again. And I don't think it's really because of the current, it's just because the the activity is less. Yeah, I mean, I found that as well in Denmark. So if you arrived at a patch of rocks, and the local guys had all told me this, what happens is you'll see the cod out and open around the rocks, or just sort of tucked up a little bit in the rocks. And then if they get disturbed, they go deeper into the rocks, okay? And then it becomes harder and harder to catch them. And I was seeing them, in ridiculously small holes. You could just see a little, fin of a cod way deep down inside. This is after, getting a couple of cod around the rocks. So it became very, very difficult. And then as activity lessens, you start seeing them closer towards the entrances again. So I've also experienced that in Denmark as well. Okay, so we've covered influence of the tide. The technique, so the diving technique. So largely, if I'm diving on a spot, especially if it's deeper water, I tend to start off with just swimming down to the bottom and waiting. So your spetto or agachon. Okay. Yeah. And then if there is a cod, you want, you're hoping that if you're near a cod, it'll come. Its curiosity will overcome itself, and it'll come to you. Then after a dive or two, I will become more active on the bottom because I haven't seen any cod. So now I'll try and find the cod. So then you slowly swim along the bottom. I guess it's like Indian fishing. What you call it in France?
Oh, you got an Indian style. I don't know what it's.
So something like that. Sort of sneaking along the bottom, especially trying to find more prominent bits of structure. Okay. And then hopefully there'll be a cod tucked up near that, or even in a hole, where that good structure is. So yeah, that's basically the techniques I use for them. And then I just wanted to share a anecdote with you. It's also to do with the when a cod's tucked up, that they sort of feel comfortable. If it's a really nice tight hole, they can be quite comfortable. And what happened is actually it wasn't me. It was my diving buddy Ross. Took sort of a beginner diver out. He didn't have much experience at all, and took him to that where I showed you that footage in the kelp where the cod was taken. So he took them to that area there, and Ross found a nice big cod in under the ledge, and didn't shoot it, marked it with his drop weight, and then called the young guy and said, I found a cod for you, come over. And he swam down with him and said, pointed, look in there. So the guy looked in, and he was looking around in this hole, and then the gun went off, and out he pulled a big wrasse. So this wrasse was splashing around and everything, and it went to the surface. Anyway, so Ross dealt with the wrasse and everything like that, and then decided, well, let me just see what's happening there. Goes down, and it's all clouded over with the disturbance from the fish, and then manages to see, after a dive or two, manages to see there is the cod still there, can see the eye. Anyway, so tells the guy, I'm going to show you exactly where to go. Just, you'll see the eye. Just go down and shoot it. Anyway, so this guy goes down, swims down, manages to shoot this thing. And then, of course, he can't get it out or anything. So it takes Ross, I don't know, 3 or 4 dives to try and untangle everything, and gets out. I think it was a 15-pound cod. So this was by miles the best fish that this young guy had shot. So yeah, it just shows, even that disturbance of shooting a wrasse in the same tight hole didn't disturb it. Whereas if they are in a more open hole or in the open, then they can very easily be disturbed. It's not like a bass. I've never seen a bass so tucked up that it can take that sort of disturbance and not
and not
go away.
Booked,
yeah, normally your approach to the hole has got to be really quiet and everything, otherwise it'll just zip out the back of a hole. But cod, if it's tucked up, it's tucked up in there.
Yeah, for the bass, it's a bit like in the wrecks. If you manage to shot your bass and let do a kill shot, you'll be able to shoot again. But if you don't shoot them well and they start messing around, the wreck will be empty in a minute. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's about all. I'm so sorry I couldn't show you some more footage to talk around. But I mean, I've got loads of footage out there. There's lots of stuff. You'll have to suffer out the dodgy music and everything, but yeah.
So we heard you talking about Portland area.
Yeah.
I just want to do a safety point again, but Portland is a tricky area to dive. If you don't know it, don't go on your own. You need to go with somebody who knows what he's doing, because the tide is picking up very quickly, and you need to time your dive around the bill, especially around the bill right. So don't try that on your own and with no experience of the area. Go with someone who can show you the stuff. Otherwise, I wouldn't advise to go there. It's dangerous. Basically, it's just dangerous. The tide is you won't be able to fight it at all. Once it's picked up properly, you won't swim against it. You'll be washed out. And the tide is such a way they push you out at sea, not close, not parallel to the shore. It's out. Please be careful. It's one of the sports we talked about already in the other video, but just be careful with that. Please don't.
Absolutely. I mean, myself and my dive buddy, we've been diving there for close to 20 years now. Well, Ross is probably over 20 years, and it was all very sequentially done with very minor sort of extensions. So we started off right near the side and stuff 20 years ago, and then you learn a bit about the tides and that, and then extend it a little bit and a tiny bit and a tiny bit over many years, and also speaking to locals and stuff like that. So yeah, I second what you say. It's extremely dangerous place to dive, and the only reason, like I say, I dive it is because I've done it with very small increments over very many years. We had a incident a couple of years ago where I was diving, and Gary Roche, some of you might know him, was on his boat, and he spotted someone, just one of the shore divers, just drifting out. So he went out, rescued the guy, brought him back to shore, and then told him to be careful and left him. And then a little bit later, the guy was again heading out to France, and he had to rescue him again. I mean, so it happened to this guy twice in one day. I mean, yeah. You just hang your head that some people just shouldn't be thinking, it's
just putting
got to have some common sense.
Themselves at risk for, like, your life is not worth a gear or fish. No. Just re-saying it again and again, because there's too many divers, and especially an inexperienced diver, would take the risk to go somewhere, and then is when the accident happened. Like Matt was saying, take baby steps, and you will be fine. Take it easy. Find a buddy or find someone who want to show you the tricks of how to work out an area. I know we need to explore as well, but maybe there is some more work to do before going in that kind of area. There is some more learning of the tide in some easier area or things like that. So yeah, just please be careful. There is the LIC comp, the comp. So there is probably, if you get in touch with Kevin from the LIC, they might be able to put you in touch with someone who's going to dive that comp this year.
Yeah, who knows if it seems highly unlikely it's going to happen this year, but it is. If you want to dive area, it is always a good, sort of the starting point. Don't go dive off the bull or anything, but you can dive anywhere in the UK, and you just meet on the bull, and then you can talk to people, and people can at least give you some pointers and show you, that place over there. They can describe to you is safe from this period of the tide to that period of the tide. So you can try that, as a starting point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, also, I think another important thing is people should do some research on their local areas. I know you've done it, and you're starting to find some cod. I mean, it's probably worth you telling your experience with, how you've gone about finding areas and that. Just the processes of how you found areas. I mean, I've bored everyone out with the couple of areas that I go to, but I know nothing about Cornwall or further towards Devon or anything like that. But guys, get them there.
What I do for the cod, basically what I've done for a lot of my fish is also looking the fish report in the rod and line, because they catch more fish than us. So basically, if they're catching, that means the fish is there. So. Yeah. When they just have, when you see the report and there's only one fish during the month, you say, well, if I go in, I won't find them. But when they're starting eating like a few fish on the same areas and everything, well, you might think, okay, let's have a look. And then you go back to the video we did about using the map and all of that. And then, okay, and you look at things. And then I always, when I got an idea of an area, the advantage of the boat, Clark, we were talking about the boat earlier, is okay, I want to check that ledge because he looks like he could be holding something. And once you dive there, you're going to see by yourself what's, okay, that's the good ground. It's a kind of single rock, big blocks, and a bit of sandy bottom, the mussel beds on one side. Okay, he may be holding the fish, and finally, the other thing I do as well is when after a long day diving, you know you're tired of your day diving and everything, but you say, okay, I'm gonna try something. I got my rod and line on the boat, and I go and jig. And if I hit the fish, one spot I find it like that. We were drifting about the spot, and we got three drift, 3 cords. And a month later, I dived it. Finally, I managed. I had the time to dive it, and shoot a cord on it. So it's exploring. It's exploring non-stop. So it's not. Yeah. So now with the social media, you need to use all that kind of library data you're getting from the dive report, the Spearo report, the rod and line fishing report, even the charter boat report. You know, it's you know, more or less, you know where the people going, you know, the area. So okay, this area seems to hold. After, they're probably not going to point the rock where you need to go, but they will say, yeah, he was in that area. Okay, but let's go and meet. I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to take my map and look what could be holding the fish, like a nice drop-off, or a drop-off and suddenly it's very flat. So things like that, and you need to find this stuff. Yeah, I know from the shore it's a bit trickier. The first dive, the first camp I've done in the UK was in Bognor, like 5 years ago now. I remember it, yes. And I had no GPS. What I've done, I just look at the map and say, okay, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna go there. And then, I managed I don't know, I managed to get ranked. That was 10th over the 25 we were there, but I've been very, very basic. Okay, I need to explore. I don't have a boat. I don't have the time to do any recce. I arrived the day before at the Bailey's place, Dave Bailey and Dan Bailey. So, and I managed to get some fish, and then let's go. Kev, thank you very much for your input about the cod. I hope we answer all the questions, guys. Any more questions, just like usual, drop your. If I don't have the answer to you, I'm just going to try to find the answer to people who knows what they're talking about. Apart from that, yeah, so have a good weekend. And see you probably Monday with Matt Newman for the BSA presentation.